In today's episode, I am going to be talking about something that has popped up, I think, in my life recently, but also in the lives of a lot of leaders that I've surrounded myself with. And that is this point that we reach where we feel like what has worked for so long isn't working anymore. Something that we felt was maybe a good strategy in the past doesn't seem to be the same. Maybe things feel heavier or things feel misaligned, and it can be really confusing because we know that has worked for us in the past. And this episode can apply in so many different ways. It can apply if you're a business owner, if you're the leader of a team, if you're the leader of a household, where you've had this feeling that what used to work no longer works anymore. So today's episode is when the leader you were won't take you where you're going. The reason this came up for me is because I feel like my business has been in this weird transitional phase for a period of time now. And when I say that, I say it because what I used to do, I could not continue doing, and I really did feel like it was working for a while. So there was this season at the beginning of my business, and I think that probably a lot of people experience this, where I felt like I had to say yes to everything. And maybe that was out of a place of need, because obviously I needed to get the experience. I needed to get feedback from clients or potential clients on what I could improve. I needed to make money, had to pay my bills. And so I felt like I was saying yes to everything to build momentum. I was taking on every networking opportunity that I could. So my calendar was stacked with coffee dates, one on ones virtually, learning about other people's businesses, making commitments as to what I could do for them to make them the connections that they needed. I was in every workshop, every event, every call. It was a lot. My schedule was packed. But eventually, that packed schedule, I realized when clients started rolling in, paying clients started rolling in, I realized that the packed schedule wasn't going to be the thing that paid the bills. I had to actually do the work. And so if you think about it, when you're networking, you're planting these seeds, and you hope that over time you start to grow the relationships and something comes of it. But for me, I felt like I had invested a lot of time and energy into them, and now it was paying off, but I didn't have the capacity to actually do the work that I had been working towards all along. And so, I was traveling up and down the road constantly for appointments, and I'd start to question, all right, how much money am I spending in gas to drive down to the office and back and do a coffee date? Well, is this coffee date going to actually make up for the time I'm spending on the road and the money that I'm investing in the trip? And I just started to ask more questions of myself. As the opportunities increased for me, I started to realize that what I had been doing maybe had made sense for the time, and people were so used to me saying yes and taking on all of those lunches and coffee dates and everything, even as far as client stuff goes. I was agreeing to do things that should have been outside of scope, should have been paid opportunities that weren't. And it just shifted for me where that was just no longer going to work anymore. So that is an example for maybe a business owner. There are so many different examples for business owners, but there's also examples for any leader in general. So if you're stepping up and managing a larger team, the way in which you've done things in the past is not going to work anymore. Stepping into a role with greater visibility. Personally, maybe seasons are shifting, relationships are shifting, where you need to focus your attention has shifted. So it goes far beyond just business owners. And it's not that what you're doing is wrong, it's just who you are has evolved. And so what that is calling for needs to evolve as well. So I feel like there's this pattern. I was just talking to a friend who is a business owner um, just this weekend, and he was talking about this new business that he recently started up. Of course, he just started, so he is taking on a lot of clients that aren't really truly paying clients. He's spending all day, every day on this business, and he's not bringing in much revenue to show for it. But we talked about that's what you kind of have to do at this stage until you have the credibility, those testimonials that you can use, the experience, and there's no real telling how long that's going to take until things shift. But at that time, you're also kind of the fixer of everything in your business. So for me, at the beginning, I was wearing all the hats and doing all the things. Very hands-on, personally building all the programs custom, delivering everything, any marketing, any details, any scheduling, all the emails, all of it was me. So that level of involvement for me at the time, I felt like was because I wanted to provide excellence, right? I was striving for excellence in everything that I did, and I felt like I had to be the one to touch everything. And I was feeling this pressure from the people around me to start getting others involved. And we talk about delegation all the time and how hard it can be to delegate. And for different reasons, right? We might we might have trouble delegating because we have a fear that someone is going to or won't be able to do it at the level that we feel we could do it. Or we don't want to have them do it because it will take longer and we don't want to invest all that time in it, or the time that it would take to train. Or we might feel like, what if we're no longer needed? If we train the people around us up and we're no longer needed, that feels like a bad thing. But I know we've done plenty of episodes before where we've talked about the importance in leadership of training your replacement, and that really a measure of success is, I look over here because I was reading it prior to the episode. It says leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that impact lasts in your absence. So that's perfect. So we know that that's what we're supposed to feel and supposed to believe, but that doesn't make it easy all the time. So really, your old strengths, the things that you did before, don't have to disappear. It's just that those aren't necessarily the tools that you need anymore. It's a period of growth, so you're going to level up in the types of things that you're doing and the strategic thinking that you have to do. And then we have to find those people that can support us with the other things. Typically, later in the episode, I do a leadership in the wild example, somebody that I see leading well. But I'm not going to wait in this one because I want to infuse it directly in where I am now. And that is Mary Sue Dayhill of Work Smarter Digital. She's been on an episode here with me before. She is someone in my circle that really leaned into having an assistant, starting to offload things that shouldn't be on her plate anymore. I feel like she was one of the first people in my network that I saw really go from being that solopreneur to finding someone that she could trust and train to do the things. And I'm kind of terrible because despite her setting that boundary for her clients and saying, if you need support, you need to email this individual, I always continued to message Mary Sue directly because it's this level of trust, right? So not only had Mary Sue decided that she was going to trust someone and set the boundary, I still went around the boundary and chose to not trust that someone could do it as well as her. So, yeah, control issues, I think so. But I do want to highlight her because she has done such a great job of leaning into the support system of people around her and knowing when she needs to bring an outside resource in to help her with the things that aren't necessarily, not that it's not her strong suit, but aren't the things that she should be doing anymore. It's just not who she needs to be anymore. Um, Same with kind of Tri-State Leadership Summit stuff. I had convinced myself that I was best in a setting where I was doing one-on-one stuff or a smaller one-to-many option, and really had not considered what it would look like to bring an entire theater full of people. Matt is always joking with me because his vision for how big things can get and my vision are very different. And I question whether I would be ready for something much larger, whereas he is all about it. So this is one of those things where I keep wavering between being in the place that I was, being at smaller venues on smaller stages, and this pull to do bigger things for our region or expanding outside of the region, which I already do with organizations, but what if I did that with entire communities? So it's this pull between where I was and where I could be. So I've started to let other people step in, bring these ideas to the table, correspond with folks on behalf of me and SLC, and not even copying me on the emails and just trusting that things are getting done and getting done at the level that I would expect them to be. That is not easy for me, but I'm doing it, and the shift has been very uncomfortable. So this is again applicable in so many different areas of life. So as a business owner, maybe it's when you start delegating core work. For managers, a lot of times I see this shift take place where they have to really change where they focus when you've been a peer and now you are leading someone that was a peer. So that is always a tough place to be because the relationships shift, and who you were isn't going to be helpful in where you are going. For individuals, maybe it's just an identity in general that you've outgrown. I've seen a lot of people in my life really change who their circle is because the circle that they hung out with no longer aligned with where they wanted to be, where they saw themselves growing and heading. Maybe other people weren't doing the same, weren't striving for that growth, so they had to change their circle. So sometimes the strategy that you have no longer applies either. So we start to experiment with different systems. We feel like we're trying to do better planning and being proactive. We're having to put forth more effort, but in a different way. But strategy alone can't do it all. It's something that I feel like it's going to require thinking outside the box and bringing other people to the table, because I feel like we have a lot of blind spots that we're not aware of. And you can strategize, but you're strategizing based on what you see and what you think to be true, but usually there's more information to that. Hopefully that makes sense. I was also thinking of another example this morning about this podcast. And when I had Rich on last week, Rich Weller, I had said something to him about how the studio had shifted and the way in which, I ran the podcast in general, the types of conversations I had, the segments that I do, how they've shifted over time. And I was picking on him for not really seeing that transition when he walked in. he hadn't seen this set before, which told me that he had probably not seen anything for like the last 40 weeks. Um, he did a good job of going back and listening to old episodes and doing a comparison of the old to the new, um, and was able to give me feedback on the shifts that occur and what we were able to do by kind of elevating the studio and changing the setup and making it more conversational instead of feeling like an interview. And so that was great feedback and great insight into the strategy that I had and whether or not it had been working. And that outside feedback was really necessary. So, again, I can have the strategy, but I feel like it's going to hit a ceiling if I don't explore some of those blind spots. I find in leadership in general, when we think about authority and decision making and ownership of things, we will hit a ceiling if we don't continue to mature and grow our emotional intelligence and our capacity to be able to have difficult conversations, and be clear in what our role is and what it no longer is. And in life in general, I feel like we hit a ceiling if we aren't in alignment. We hit a place where we're not sure where to go. We're just kind of going through the motions because we don't feel like what we're doing necessarily aligns with our purpose or our values. And that's why I tend to enjoy having those types of conversations. So, what is this period of growth, these shifts in who you are and your identity? What's it actually asking of you? I think the pattern is you're going from reacting to a place of discernment. We talk about reactive versus proactive. Um, Same kind of thing here, right? We're reacting to situations. I went from delivering everything to building repeatable frameworks, discerning what should be on my plate and what shouldn't be, from executing every session, every type of service that SLC delivers, to designing systems that allow a potential client to go through a process that helps filter who that collaborative partner from SLC might be that can best support them and get a direct link to them instead of me being the filter and me having to touch everything. So there was a time where I felt like energy drove decisions because things sounded exciting, so I'd say yes, but energy is not a strategy. Um, I feel like also moving from being that central point and being at the core to building capacity in others, so that you don't have to be the primary touch point in everything that your company does or your family does, however you are applying this. So helping others to learn how to carry some of those pieces and be able to operate without that constant direction. While that's happening, you might feel like you're losing control. But it's what happens when you're building teams instead of tasks, and you're shaping a culture instead of fixing every issue for people and jumping in as soon as a mistake is made. So that I feel like this is a necessary shift as well. So moving from being at that core to building capacity. I think those are really the two main things for me that stand out, no matter how you're applying this. I think we do need to kind of normalize the emotional toll that it takes when you experience this growth. Maybe you're less involved in the same way, you're less visible. You might feel like you don't have as many quick wins. I feel like the things on my task list take a long time now, whereas before it was an easy check mark, a really quick thing. But now the level of impact that a decision can make is much greater. And so the process of putting these things in place, I feel like takes much longer. So I'm not seeing those quick wins, and that can take an emotional toll too, because you feel like you're investing a lot of time and effort, and you might not see the results immediately. I feel like it takes a toll because of the changing relationships, and those that you might lose along the way. You might lose a sense of certainty as to exactly how things will end up, where things will go. I know I have a lot of question marks in things that I'm trying to plan out, and I'm trying to find this balance of going with the flow and taking into account new information, but also being strategic and looking years ahead, instead of just a year ahead, which is very different. And letting go of old identity markers of, when I used to reflect on my identity as Sierra Collins, or my identity as the owner of SLC, what that looked like. That shift that has taken place is actually a good thing, though it didn't feel like it when it was happening. So there are definitely days that I miss the simplicity of things. I miss the ability to pop into a networking event, or the ability to just say yes when someone asks for a one-to-one or to go to lunch. I kind of miss being able to be involved in all the details and in every conversation. There are definitely pieces that are hard to give up. But I'm also excited about the opportunities that I have to have greater impact by building the team's capacity and not being at the core of every single thing that happens. So, again, these changes don't mean that you're doing something wrong. Doesn't mean that you are ever doing something wrong. It just means that something is changing for you, and it's a meaningful change, and you just need to explore what this new phase might require of you. So that's what I want you to think about is, who is this season asking you to be? What used to work for you that might feel heavier now, or doesn't seem to work in the same way that it did before? Is there anything that you are holding on to because it feels familiar, but you're not sure that it is where you need to be in the future? So I don't feel like for me that the business outgrew my skill. I feel like I just outgrew my old identity, and the way in which I'm choosing to kind of elevate the brand and elevate myself has caused that shift. So I'm curious for you, what might growth require you to release, and what might it require you to explore that you've never considered before? Those are the kinds of things that I think would be helpful to reflect on based on this episode. I also had pulled a Leadership Unscripted submission. So those of you that don't know, this is a listener submission of a challenge that they're facing, so that we can give some feedback as to what might be helpful in these situations. And I thought that this was in perfect alignment with the topic for today, so this is why I chose it. This person said, "I've always been hands-on, but my team is growing and I can't do everything myself anymore. How do I let go of control without feeling like I'm losing quality?" Does that sound familiar? That's what I was just talking about, and the battle that I kind of had been facing myself. So the things that I thought about this, number one, I had to start asking, does it have to be done my way, or does it just need to be done well in general? Because those aren't necessarily the same, and they might arrive at an exceptional result and take a different path there. So maybe redefining what quality actually means, and what being done well looks like, and being clear in those expectations, and what the success criteria are, but not micromanaging how the person gets there. And I know I've been terrible with this in the past. I had to really work on it, especially with Matthew. because I will look over his shoulder and I've asked him to do something and I'm like, yeah, that's not how I would do that. And I automatically think, my way's better or my way's faster. And so I've had to start kind of detaching from that and saying, as long as he does the thing by the time that I've asked him to do it, and I feel like he is representing the brand well, that I have to stop being involved in the rest of it. I think starting with low risk delegation and empowering people to try the smaller things first and build trust there might help. Um, I think the hardest part of that is letting them make mistakes and then asking questions about what they're noticing and what they're learning. And the impact that their decisions are having, asking questions rather than immediately saying, this is how you need to do it instead. That doesn't make it meaningful or memorable to someone. It's going to be the most powerful if they're reflecting on where the challenges are coming up and how it's preventing them from being successful rather than you just giving the solution. So I think that asking questions could be powerful here. Identifying checkpoints, key milestones, rather than the constant oversight, so they know when to expect a check-in or what to expect you to ask at that time, so that they're not feeling micromanaged, which I know a lot of the leaders that I work with, that's shift that's taking place. I'm starting to delegate, but I feel like I'm micromanaging them. How do I prevent that? So if you define the success criteria, that's a difficult word for me today, success criteria in advance and what those key checkpoints are, then there's no question about whether you're micromanaging or not, because you talked about it from the beginning and you know what is realistic as far as check-ins go. And then just be aware there is that emotional side of letting go that I was talking about earlier. It's the fear of, mistakes, or fear of being less needed, or fear of losing your identity, which was a part of that role and the tasks associated with it. That can be challenging. So acknowledge that, maybe let yourself feel that a little bit. And know that everybody experiences that when they first start experimenting with delegation and trying to see where they can develop people to take on additional things. So hopefully that is helpful and covered some of the things that you are experiencing. I know that I have a specific delegation framework that I use and I teach my clients, and I think I've covered that in a previous episode. I do not know off the top of my head when or what episode number, but maybe a quick delegation search might help. I'm sure that it's been covered at some point. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, any challenges you are facing, and you would like to reach out, please shoot us an email at info@branchingoutpodcast.com and let us know what you're having difficulty with, so we can give you some feedback, or you can give recommendations of episode topics that you would like us to further explore in general. So we'd love to hear from you. So for our branching out challenge today, I kind of gave you some reflection questions earlier of what to be considering, but I'll say it again. I'm going to challenge you to really question who you are as a leader today and who that is calling you to be in comparison to maybe where you were just a year ago. And what are some of the things that you feel like you're ready to let go of? And maybe any new leadership habits you feel like you need to build, or things you need to explore based on where you are today. So we're looking forward, looking far enough ahead to question, what is this next stage, this next season, and what is it asking of us? So what got you here and what might be required next for where you are going. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode and you were able to find some value, whether you're a business owner, you're leading a team, you're leading a family. Hopefully, my goal is to always make sure that everybody gets something out of these episodes and that I'm not just targeting one specific listener. Matt reminded me that I haven't really talked about the mission of this podcast in a long time. And I kind of forgotten that I used to, back in season 1, kind of touch on that at the beginning of every episode. Then I started making this assumption that, yeah, well, the people that reach out to me, they're listening to it every week, so they don't need to hear that again. But it's probably time. So just a reminder that the whole purpose of this podcast was really to reach people and help them to understand that we all have the ability to positively influence others' lives. So you are leading, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. If you are at some point in your day interacting with another human being, you have the opportunity to influence their life in a positive way. And so we want to take leadership skills that I would teach in an organization, and we want to apply these to everyday life. So how you can take a concept like what we're talking about today, about kind of growing into that next stage, and what you're being called to be right now, not being what you needed to be in the past, how that truly applies to anyone, no matter where they are. That's what I'm trying to do with these topics. I want it to be relatable. I want it to be actionable. So hopefully I'm doing that. Hopefully I'm achieving my mission, and I will start including that in the episodes as a reminder, especially for my new listeners as well. Well, we do drop a new episode every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. So if you're not subscribed, be sure to do that so you get the notification. We would love to see our number of followers, our subscribers always increasing, especially as you're sharing this episode with people in your life that you feel like would benefit. So if you know of someone that is in a different season and could benefit from some of these reflections, please share this episode with them. Or just the podcast in general. Hopefully they can find something in the episodes that they can turn right around and implement right away. Thank you again for joining me till the end of the episode. We would love to talk to some sponsors this year in 2026. We're having those conversations with what we can do with those brands, those organizations that align with our values, and we can help promote your brand through the podcast. So if you're interested in hearing more about our different packages for sponsors, please reach out. Again, our email address is info@branchingoutpodcast.com. So don't hesitate to reach out, or if you have a recommendation of an organization that you feel is aligned, we'd love to hear from you. All right, until next time, keep branching out.